A little bit of a different topic today. I like to talk about from time to time what it's like running a YouTube channel. I like to refer to myself as a niche micro E-Celeb. Um, but the truth is my channel got a lot bigger than I ever thought it would. I don't have a big channel or even really a medium channel, but I get a lot more views and a lot more engagement than I ever thought. And I do find it gives me a bit of an insight into something that larger channels deal with and other kind of people who do commentary have to face. And I think it is interesting from time to time to just kind of reflect on that and share some of my thoughts with you, not just for your sake, but my sake as well, as it provides a good opportunity to reflect. So, what I wanted to talk about today is the challenges with trying to be honest and trying to be real and trying to appeal to your viewer base, because this can be a very difficult challenge. When I started this channel, I said that I'd always try to be real with you guys. And by and large, I think I have been. And I think that is one of my strengths, where even if somebody I don't like or I think is a bad person does something I agree with or makes a decent point, I'll say the person's still a bad person, but this makes sense. Or they have a good point there, or I just won't blindly support someone who's A-logging someone I dislike if they're coming from I think is a bad and dishonest place. And I do think that, like I said, that is one of my major strengths. But that brings kind of its own issues with it. And an issue you have, I think, whenever you're someone who's expressing your opinions, particularly in kind of a niche arena like this, is there's kind of a trade off. Do you want to be honest and upfront? Do you want to say, like, if you feel a certain way or you think a certain way, are you just going to push forward with that and explain that? Are you going to try to pretend that you have certain opinions that you know would appeal to your viewer base? Or if you have an opinion that you know that they're going to dislike, do you just not mention it? Do you not mention it? Do you not talk about it? If somebody brings it up, you say, I have no opinion, or otherwise ignore it. And it's a very difficult question. I often will use the term, and people will use the term grifter in these circles. And how I would basically define that is somebody who whatever they say aligns with what they think their audience wants to hear and what they think is going to get them the most clicks and the most views, regardless if it contradicts things they previously said or their own personal beliefs or that sort of thing. I find that particularly prevalent within the drama community and a lot of A-logging, because you'll have people who will be, theoretically at least, like alt-right or far-right, and they'll make all kinds of like race jokes or Jew jokes or something. But when they're commentating on someone who's doing the same, they'll call them a racist or a homophobe, and they'll be like, oh geez, I'm so like outraged and I'm so scandalized by it, because they know their audience wants them to shit on the person, and so they will take any avenue to kind of fulfill that need. And they correctly, I guess, kind of guess in those circumstances that the hatred of that specific person among their audience is more important than any kind of consistency. You'll also have people who previously said certain things or they covered certain issues, and then they'll just completely forget about it and pretend it never happened. Like, sorry to bring a specific example into this, but a long time back when Ralph's tape came out, Gator made a video disavowing it, saying it was a bad thing, that he disagreed with it, and Godwinson covered that. And I remember very vividly he did a whole like 40-minute video saying that he respected that Gator came out and did that. And then I was watching a Godwinson video the other day, and he's like, Gator never condemned Ralph. He never criticized Ralph for that. Gator's a scumbag. And I'm like, Godwinson, you covered that. You just know that your audience doesn't like Gator at this point. So you're just lying and making something up as a way to appease them. So that's one aspect of it, is taking positions that contradict previous positions or that contradict what you currently believe because they want you to A-log someone or to attack someone, even if you might agree with them in that particular case. I mean, once again, it's perfectly fair to say you don't trust the person or you think the other person's just saying that to appeal to their audience, but it's generally speaking pretty clear when that sort of thing happens. There's also the temptation to adopt certain positions or, well, we say to LARP at certain positions, even if you might not hold them. The whole trad grift is a really big thing there, where there'll be a lot of people who live pretty normal lives, but they'll talk about like how technology's evil, how they want to go farm, how they want like a homestead and stuff like that. And realistically, they're never going to do it. A lot of these people are never going to do that. They live in an urban area. They're probably going to get a white collar job and live a relatively normal life. And the whole trad thing, the whole live in a woods thing is just something they say to try to get approval from the people around them and to kind of make themselves feel like somebody special. And if I was to do something like that, I'd probably have more success. Like, in particular for me, the big area where if I wanted to LARP and I wanted to play something up, I would really play more to the traditional Catholic angle because that would be overwhelmingly popular with most of my viewer base, either Catholics or non Catholics. But I've tried to be honest in the past that I go to Novus Ordo. I'm not like a huge Latin Mass guy. My faith is a very, very important part of my life, something that's always on my mind. But I'm not particularly devout compared to a lot of people, like going to adoration or saying the rosary daily or doing a lot of devotions and stuff like that. It's just, I'm not particularly devout in that way. And I know if I wanted to really appeal to certain people and maybe get money out of people, I talk about how I only go to the Latin Mass, how I drive like an hour to go to the closest one, that I say like 5 rosaries every day or something like that. And I'm not saying that there aren't a lot of people who do that and are very honest about it, but I feel like there's an equal number of people who will adopt the trad label or adopt the traditional Catholic label, and they might not even be baptized. They don't go to church. Like that was something back in the day when I used to hang out in more NRX circles. A lot of people who weren't even baptized would be like, "Why don't you go to a Latin mass? You're a heretic." And I'm like, "Well, you don't even go to church. I at least go to church on a regular basis." And you'll kind of have stuff like that, but it's popular, and they know it's something that their viewer base wants to hear. It's also just like there's a lot of other issues. Like if you had a like and this was kind of an issue with COVID, and I've talked about this many times in the past where it was such an immensely polarizing issue that turned into kind of a culture war issue that you really couldn't have any sort of moderate opinion on it. Like you couldn't say, okay, maybe masks on public transit and airplanes make sense, but they don't make sense like in grocery stores or something, or had some kind of nuanced opinion on it, or said, well, maybe people who are immunocompromised or really old should have get vaccinated, but maybe it's not necessary for young people or stuff like that, or say for instance that the vaccine maybe will have a higher failure rate than a normal vaccine, but it's not some like thing that's going to turn your blood into the black oil virus from X Files. And it was really an issue where you couldn't have a kind of a moderate position one way or another, and you kind of had to just be 100% the whole thing's a new world order lockdown, or trust the science, trust the plan, do whatever Fauci and whatever the person was in Canada wants you to do, and just kind of completely roll over and be a slave. And I mean, there's a temptation in that direction. There's also just like there's a lot of things like that. Like on architecture questions, you may or may not be the biggest fan of, I don't know, Gothic architecture or some sort of traditional architecture, but there's kind of an obligation to like that. There's an obligation to support certain music types. There's kind of all these obligations as kind of part of the sphere culture. And even if it's not like something you actually do in your personal life, like maybe you don't listen to that much classical music, Maybe if you were going to build a house, you wouldn't build it in that style. But you know that's going to piss off your audience, and you know your audience is going to leave you. If you do that, at the same time, though, do you really want to watch someone who's fake? Do you really want to watch someone who's never going to challenge you, who's never going to be honest, who's never going to express a real opinion? They're just going to say whatever they think you want to hear, and they're never going to like entertain alternative ideas. And this came up the other day because people were talking once again about the whole Nick Rekieta kick Vic thing. And a lot of people call Nick Rekieta a grifter because he will basically just say whatever he thinks his audience wants to hear. He doesn't really have any opinions of his own. It's just whatever he thinks is going to get him the most donations. And like for the whole Kick Vic thing, he just said, "Oh, it's 100%. It's a slam dunk. We have the best lawyer. We have all this stuff." And then the whole thing just turned into a disaster. He hired a really bad lawyer for that particular thing. They completely screwed up the case, and now Vic is like bankrupt and destitute, and his career's over. And a lot of innocent people, myself included, donated money with the best of intentions. They weren't trying to enrich Rekieta. They legitimately thought, hey, we like Vic. The guy's being persecuted for no reason. He's a devout Christian. Let's support him. He's trying to be canceled. And then they got scammed out of that. And like I said, it's difficult because if you have a wrong opinion, then people might kick you out of a particular group or they might stop watching you. And that's completely understandable. There's certain things that are non negotiable to me. And if someone kind of breaks one of those, then I'm just not interested in them anymore. And I kind of feel that our worldviews are too unreconcilably different. So I don't really know where the line is. I generally speaking try to be honest about my opinions as much as I can. I tend, if I think something's going to be very unpopular, to just not talk about it, to not bring it up, or to bring it up in like in the middle of a stream or in some very quiet place. I don't like to lie about what I think, but I might not fully express my particular opinion on something. And this is something I struggle with in real life because obviously I'm Canadian and none of my views are normal in this country. So if people ask me my opinion about a political issue, I'll just normally say I don't talk about politics, or I don't really have any thoughts about that, or um just something, or just try to change the subject. Like I'm not gonna lie and say I support something that I don't. Or there's also the deflection route where someone might say like Trump sucks or something, and then you bring up maybe some economic policy he did, or how he failed with NAFTA, or something like that. And you agree with them, and you legitimately agree with them, but you don't agree with them for the reason that they think you're agreeing with them for. And maybe that sounds very solipsistic and stuff like that, but that's just kind of the way that you have to survive. So, sorry if this video is kind of rambling and incoherent, but I think it's a really interesting um, issue that you come across as a content creator, and something that there's not really an easy or consistent way to deal with. It's just kind of something that's there and you have to kind of struggle with. But I guess that's just how interpersonal relationships work in